back.
I know.
All right, let's dig into it. What should one avoid doing when you're asked an interview question that you have no idea on how to answer?
Well, during an interview, it goes without saying, sometimes as a candidate, you will find yourself being asked a question and you run completely blank. You may not have an answer to respond to that question immediately. So that is not the end of the world for you as a candidate. Some of the things that a candidate needs to avoid, number one, is never lie. Avoid lying about your response. And then number two, also avoid being visibly pressure. To what extent can you be able to handle stressful situations? That's why sometimes you find a question out of the blues just comes and you run completely blank. Yeah,
I think lying takes you to things that are not even related. So I think, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So what should you do instead?
Having prepared several candidates for their upcoming interviews, what the best advice I would give on what to do in such a situation, number one, like I said earlier, it is okay to be silent and never be afraid of being silent. So being silent helps you to be able to buy time. So you can buy time, and you're not exerting pressure on the interviewers or on the panelists. They are wondering now, why is the candidate silent? As you buy time for your mind to process through what to say, and it is okay to be honest. Another thing that you can do in such a situation is just be honest and inform or rather tell the candidate interview this is an area you're still very new in. You may not have the skill that they are looking for, but you are on plan, and you will definitely do your more research about it and get back to them after the interview. Because even them, sometimes they're just asking the question to put to it. But if you're able to acknowledge and be honest instead of just talking or ringing on something that is not making sense to the interviewers, sometimes it is better to be silent than to just speak up and whatever you're saying is not really adding up. Another thing that you can do as a candidate when you find yourself in such a situation is to redirect the question. A good example that I can give when it comes to redirecting, let's assume the candidate is being interviewed on something to do with social media marketing, and that's an area that maybe as a candidate you don't have so much experience in. You can redirect the question by talking about something that you have more experience in that is closely related. A good example can be copywriting, for example. But now again, this is the opportunity that you have as a candidate to show your excitement to learn a new skill and to upgrade your skill in that area. So the last thing I can talk about that a candidate can do whenever faced with a question that you don't have an answer to is to compose yourself and be very confident. Because again, interviewers are keen on how are you going to react to that question. What are your first reactions looking like? And that is helping them to conclude how you will be reacting to those tough, challenging work-related situations when you are eventually on the job. So you need to exude confidence and just make the employer or the interviewer see you as someone who can be able to think through a tough situation. And whenever you find yourself in a stressful situations, you can still be able to buy time and compose yourself even before you react to the situation at hand. Yeah.
Do you think nonverbal cues really come through in such conditions? Because I feel you really have to accompany them with how you express yourself.
I agree with you 100% because it goes without saying never anyone is exposed to a stressful situation. And to be more specific, during an interview, you are asked a question that you never really saw it coming, and you begin to wonder why is he asking me such a question? Maybe a candidate, you are a female candidate, and the person interviewing you is a male, and the first question they ask is, are you married? Then you begin to wonder, how is this related to the interview at hand? So they just want to see how is your reaction. And so even the body language comes in handy. That's why we said avoid being visibly uncomfortable. With the body language, we can tell whether you are uncomfortable, whether you are nervous. Yes, so it calls for you to be very confident. It is the best time to exude confidence and think through before you speak, before you begin to respond to the question.
I even breathe a bit before.
Yes,
in
yes.
30 seconds.
Definitely. The deep breath helps a lot to help you calm your nerves, and to think through,
Yeah. So, any final advice? Anything you'd like to add on to what you've just said?
Well, what I would want to say to candidates, maybe listening or watching this video, is that it is okay not to have the right responses to all questions during the interview. Sometimes a question will always come that you don't have an answer to. It doesn't mean that you failing to respond or you telling the interviewer to give you more time to respond to that question at the end of the interview or even later in the day via email is like the end of your candidacy. But now, depending on how you handle the situation at hand at that particular time, if you take into consideration the tips we have talked about, then definitely there is a way the interviewer is seeing you and is viewing you, and they are concluding in terms of how you handle specific work-related stressful situations. So it is okay not to have an answer. It's not the end of the world, but then again, it takes us back to preparation. You cannot fail to have, fail not to have answers for all interview questions, especially the common ones.
Yeah.
Someone was asking me during the coaching session, like, what if that awful question you normally ask, the very first one, tell us about yourself. So I can actually tell them I'll get back to you after the interview about that. I'm like, be prepared with the commonly asked interview questions and even foresee the kind of tough ones you're most likely to be asked so that it doesn't find you off guard.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up. And we do have a free interview question and answer page on our website. But other than that, you need to be well prepared for your interview. The stakes are high. You want that job, so you want to be well informed and well prepared to know how to react to such kind of situations. We have interview coaching services where you're gonna find in the link below, and you'll meet Mary, who is going to help you prepare for your next interview. See you in the next video.
Hi there and welcome to this video. My name is Mary Amondo, in charge of training and career advisory services here at Corporate Staffing. And today we are going to be looking at interviews and how best you can be able to stand out when you have been called for that interview. As usual, I'm joined by Paminas, our CEO, who will be helping us in this discussion. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mary.
Great.
Yeah.
We are discussing about interviews today.
Yes.
And I'm just looking at some of the strategies that can help a candidate to stand out during an interview.
Yeah.
And the question that I have is, how can a candidate effectively highlight their skills and even their experiences in a way that sets them apart from other candidates during an interview?
That's a very good question, Mary. But before I give you the tips on how, any professional watching this can ensure that they stand out during an interview, is to make every professional understand that when it comes to an interview, it's not the most qualified or experienced person who gets the job. It's the person or individual who's able to market themselves within those 30 minutes or 1 hour, you've been in that interview room. It may sound unfair, but the reality is, interviews, look at it, the work of an interview is now to be able to sell yourself. Just like the work of the CV is to get your foot in the door, so that you can be able to sell yourself. So having said that and having seen the importance of an interview, what are some of the things that you can do to be able to really highlight your experience and stand out? Number one is to make sure that you understand the job description very well. I've seen so many instances where someone is invited for an interview for a job they applied a week or 2 months ago, and the first thing they do is to go and Google the answers, interview question and answers. There's nothing wrong with that, but the starting point should understand the expectation that the employer has of you. Look at that job description thoroughly. In fact, analyze it. Then look at your CV and see what responds, because it will give you some insight into why I felt that you are an ideal candidate for that position. So that's number one, analyze the job description very well, because I can guarantee you 90% of the questions will come from that job description. It's a fact. I've done this for over 10 years, and that's the script. We did it last week, we're going to do it next week. It's not going to change. Yeah, because it's the job. We're interviewing you based on the job. And how do you know the job? From the job description. So that's number one. Have a very good understanding of the job description. The next thing you need to do is, obviously, now you're giving answers, make sure they are specific and they are tailored to the job description. Don't be general, don't be vague. Again, I've met many candidates who are very qualified, the CV looks good, they look good, they have the right experience and the skills, but the answers they're giving, they're not specific, they're not tailor-made. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm hiring an admin who work in a factory, and as compared to, let's say, in a hospital. Those are two different setups. If you look at a hospital, what kind of people will you be receiving? There are people who are distressed. There are people who you need to really service in a very quick way. Your emotional intelligence skills really need to be at a higher level. It's also complex in the sense that a hospital, it's 24 hours. You know, you'll be meeting after every 2-3 minutes. There's someone who needs to be serviced. Now, compared to a